All right, I think we're going to get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Mark Rudnick, and I serve as the Vice President of Learning Partnerships at Guild, where I get the pleasure of leading the team at Guild that looks after the relationships that we have with our academic institutions, our academic partners. And I'm joined by a set of panelists here for a conversation that I'm really excited about. I think just to sort of tee things up a little bit for us, we have seen over the course of history that education can be leveraged and really put to use as a catalyst for a deep understanding of and solutioning around some of the world's greatest social issues, environmental, economic, health. And I think climate change is certainly one of those issues, perhaps the foremost issue of our time in that category. And at Guild, we work really closely and very deeply with partners, both employers and some of the world's leading forward-thinking academic institutions, organizations on both sides of our marketplace in an effort to really develop opportunity for upward mobility for the American workforce. And we believe really deeply in the idea that creating connections between learning partners and employers can really help us collectively solve big challenges, really big, important challenges in the world. So for that reason, I'm really excited to dig into our conversation today. And to start, what I'd like to do is hand the virtual mic, or the in-person mic, I guess now. I'm so used to that, to our panelists up on stage here. And I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves, tell us all a little bit about themselves, their work, their organization, and share why this close connection between industry and education is so exciting or so important to you and to the organizations that you represent. So maybe Shweta, I'll start with you.
Sounds great. Thank you. Thanks for having me here. I'm Shweta Kurvey-Mishra. I'm the Vice President of Org and Talent Development at WM. And what that means for us is I own all talent processes from hire to retire and everything in between for our workforce. When you think about the connection between education and what I do, it's really critical with the kind of pace that we are experiencing in the industry, right? The pace of change, the agility that's required. And when you think about the curriculum or the learning that individuals have through their education and how they come and apply into our world in the industry and succeed, therefore meeting the mission and the goals of the company, it's really important that that connection becomes stronger and faster and quicker and better. And so for me, it's really important to look at it that way. As part of leading the org and talent development function, I have training centers and the learning function under me, and the partnerships that we have with Guild and others is really helping us accelerate meeting the gap between what's needed for the business to run and succeed and the skills that are required out in the marketplace. So really excited to be part of this conversation today.
Yes, thanks for having me today. My name is Candice Jeffrey, and I am the Senior Director of Learning and Development and Talent Management for Sunrun. Sunrun is the largest residential solar company with the goal of becoming the largest clean energy company. And becoming the largest clean energy company is no small task. And so in order for us to meet that goal, we have to partner with education. We need to partner with education to really help us secure the talent so we can have the growth that we need and ultimately tackle climate change.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lisa Templeton, and I serve as the Associate Provost for Oregon State University's Ecampus. Ecampus is the online education division that supports the entire university. At Ecampus, we are passionate about adult learners and helping adult learners achieve their learning goals. We have students who are there because they want to change careers. We have students with us who want to advance in their careers. And we have quite a few students who started their education at one point and never finished. And now's the time in their life they want to go back to school and finish their degree. Last year, we had over 12,000 degree-seeking students taking our online programs, and we had over 28,000 unique students taking our online courses. We have students in all 50 states. We have students in over 60 countries now taking our online courses, so we've grown significantly. OSU is a recognized leader in disciplines such as sustainability, climate change, natural resources, environmental sciences, and because of that, a third of our 90 online degree programs are in those subject areas, so this is definitely a niche for us. So I'm really excited to be here today to talk about how our educational programs are helping the workforce and helping people get into these kind of careers.
Thanks, Lisa. My name is Darryl Warren. I'm the president of Career at Penn Foster. Penn Foster is a skills-based digital learning platform that focuses on training for careers that require an associate's degree and below. And so we typically deal with non-traditional students, if that's really a term. We have 250,000 learners each year that are looking for a path to employment that includes needing the skills to train for those jobs. And so in our role, we do a lot of work in the skilled trades, solar technician, electrician, the construction end of things. Obviously, climate change and clean energy and all those types of jobs range at full spectrum from scientists all the way to technicians. And we focus on the technician core and have really pivoted over the last few years to adjust our programs to meet the needs of employers so that when our learners come, they have a path to a job when they finish.
Great. So I think what would be really interesting to start, and maybe Candice, I'll start with you. Would love to hear a little bit about sort of what initially spurred the interest from Sunrun to get engaged in a program like the one that you're doing with Guild, and in general, sort of creating pathways to clean jobs through the clean energy.
Absolutely. So really what spurred our interest is that it's anticipated that there will be over 900,000 solar jobs by 2035. And that spurred with the growth, or in conjunction with the growth that we anticipate at Sunrun, which is about 20% year over year. We have to create really robust talent programs that upskill our people. You know, when I think about the jobs of today, they didn't even exist in the past. For example, we just hired 40 customer success managers in Q1 of 2022, and that job description just wasn't there last year. Another example is, and this is where we partnered with Guild and Penn Foster. We anticipated this year, meaning in 2021 and 2022, that we were going to need 200 certified electricians, in addition to what we had in California alone. And it's hard to find electricians. If any of you are in that business, it's hard to find electricians. And so we've hired 56 to date. You can tell it's hard to find electricians. But we knew this was going to be a problem. And so we partnered with Penn Foster, we partnered with Guild to put a certified electrician program in place. And we started some of our entry-level solar panel installers in that program, and right now we have about 150 going through the program. Are we still far behind? Absolutely. Again, if you're familiar with electricians, it takes a while to get them through that program with the hours that they need, but we had to start somewhere. And so yeah, those are some of the things that spurred our interest at Sunrun.
Yeah, sounds like some really pressing demand. I want to come back to talking a little bit more about the work that Sunrun and Penn Foster have done, but maybe before we go there, Shweta, I wonder if you could similarly sort of share from the WM perspective, what was it that got the organization excited about sort of investing in this space?
Sure. So when we think about the journey that WM has been on, you know, the traditional brand that WM carried was that we pick up trash, right? You see the green and gold trucks and that we pick up trash. What we are trying to do is constantly work for building a sustainable tomorrow. And there's so much that goes into making that happen for ourselves, our communities, and our customers. So the more we wanted to meet our customers' sustainability needs and requirements, the more we need to invest in things like upgrading our recyclable materials recovery centers, right? So if you think about it, we are North America's largest recycling material organization. When you upscale it and you use technology, we need individuals and talent similar to what was just shared that can do that, that can make that happen for us. So our partnership with Guild helps us do that. I'll have to be honest, one of the original reasons why we wanted to partner with Guild was also to create a social impact out there, right? To invest in our employees. And we are one of the first to not just offer tuition-free education to our employees, but also dependents. So there's about 36,000 employees, eligible employees, that have access to education through a partnership with you, with Guild, as well as their dependents, their spouses, and their children. And so what we are doing is creating a social impact. We are investing in careers and education for our employees and their dependents that will eventually meet the needs of the climate change, meet the issues that we have to cover to ensure that our environment is more sustainable than it is today. So I think from WM standpoint, it was a two-way thing. It was creating our own workforce development, so to speak. It was social impact, and it was helping us bridge the gap between what is needed for us to build a sustainable tomorrow from where we are today.
I want to come back to sort of touching on the social impact piece, because I think that's a really important part of the work that all of the organizations up here on stage are doing in this space. But maybe before we do, Dara, I would love to hear you sort of share from the Penn Foster perspective a little bit more about the really innovative program that Penn Foster has been running with Sunrun, and maybe sharing a little bit about the program, and tell us a little bit about sort of how the ability to really collaborate closely with Sunrun has sort of impacted the approach that Penn Foster has taken here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as many of you know, apprenticeship programs are sort of one of the oldest and most established type of education. They've been around forever, and apprenticeship programs work when you have training in conjunction with employment. And so we used a model that says apprenticeships need to have deep connection with employers, but they need to have the right training aligned to that role when we partnered with Sunrun. They had very specific needs at a state level to hire and train, or train and hire electricians for their specific roles. And so we worked with the team at Sunrun to really identify what the specific skills that were needed that would be sort of early indicator skills, like what would be the first things we need to train. And then we brought our expertise around what's required in individual states and what's required to get the licensure needed for this type of program. Now, the one thing I would note is that when you're taking a population and bringing them into a new career, especially one as technical and difficult as an electrician, people are going to come to it with a varying level of kind of readiness. Some people might be ready to go, they have the math skills, they're ready to go, and they can go into the program, be successful. Others really need to understand a little bit about what it's like, how they're going to be able to get into it and try it. And so we've been playing around with different models around how do you get people to that first step so that they can be successful on a path to an electrician, which is long. There's a lot of hours that are required. It's technical instruction plus on-the-job training, and you really need to be excited about it. The good news is that Sunrun has a lot of great opportunities and can show the individuals what the career paths they'll be getting into and the potential to grow as their company grows.
That's great. Candice, anything you would add from the Sunrun perspective, just sort of on the I know the program is still in its early days, but sort of reflections on both it coming together, but also sort of how the program is doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. It is in its early stages. I believe right now we have Penn Foster to where you can certify it in Hawaii only, right? But it was, we were so happy to find Penn Foster through Guild, because it's difficult. It's difficult if you're not going directly through the community colleges and you have a population that's spread out throughout the United States, and you really want to have some commonality on how do we do this, and it's not all of these different community colleges. it's difficult to find. So yeah, we were very happy to find Penn Foster, and we've been using WICA to help us certify in the meantime. But it's been a good journey so far, and I'm really excited to continue this and work with Penn Foster to where they can, do more of the certifications in additional states.
That's great, and I do think one of the reasons we work with Penn Foster and in general the sort of guild approach is we recognize that there are real challenges and real barriers, particularly in industries that are regulated or highly regulated, as is in the case here, and lots of complexity therein to sort out, to figure out.
Well, we thought we were going to do our own apprenticeship in-house. That was really hard.
Lisa, I'm wondering, you mentioned in your introduction sort of about some of the really innovative programs that Oregon State is running in this space. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that and sort of the approach that the university is taking in that regard.
Sure, I'd be happy to. At Oregon State, we're really proud to be one of only 2 U.S. universities that is a land, sea, sun, and space grant institution. So working on solving environmental issues, that's who we are. It's in our university's DNA. This is what many of our faculty members study every day. This is what we teach about. So for us, having this faculty expertise is critical. In my unit, Ecampus, that I oversee, we have a group of instructional designers, and these IDs, they are experts in online pedagogy. What makes a great online course? How do you, an online course, engaging? So what we do at Ecampus is we take this content expert in climate, and we take our instructional designer, who is expert in online pedagogy, and together we build the online course. We also have a multimedia team, a very talented group who come in and do video, animation, whatever it may be that we need to achieve the learning outcomes of the course. So the model we have is this true partnership, all with our internal people, our experts at Oregon State. And I have 2 examples that I want to talk about that I think are pretty cool at what we're doing. One is we offer a sustainability double degree. So what this means is you could be a business major, an art major, an engineer, and at the same time as you're getting that degree, you could also get a degree in sustainability. And this is pretty unique, and what I love about it is it's really preparing students to be agents of positive change no matter what career they go into, even if they're not just a scientist. The other program that I really like that I talk about a bit is our natural resources degree. And what's unique about the natural resources degree at Oregon State is we have what's called an ISO, an individual specialty option, that the student works on with their academic advisor, and it enables the student to really tailor the degree towards specific goals and interests of theirs. And before I left, I wrote to an advisor, a natural resource. I said, give me an example I can share of a ISO to paint a picture. So I have one I'm just going to read real quickly. The student's name is Ray. Ray is working in sanitation while he gets his contractor's license and finishes his natural resources degree. He is interested in the intersection of equity and land use sustainability in Black communities. He's developing an ISO that incorporates some social justice, some environmental assessment, and sustainable land use planning. Like most natural resources students, he is concerned about the future impacts of climate change and wants to be a part of the solution. So that just gives you an example of how this program takes what Ray's interested in and kind of lets him design his own course within limits of the university.
I love that. I love that story. I love that that concept of sort of the multidisciplinary way in which Oregon State is approaching it. To me, it feels like I think climate change impacts so many different parts of the way we work and the way we live, and the idea to be able to sort of weave that into folks who are studying business, or folks who are studying engineering, or folks who are studying English. It's really, really impactful.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we need people who are thinking sustainably in every career. Yep. So that is our goal, not just our scientists. So.
Yep. Love that. Shweta, I want to come back to a concept that you touched on earlier, and is actually something that's really important that we talk about a lot at Guild, which is how to balance between mission and business. And Guild is a B Corp. It's an organization where we think really deeply and take really seriously both our social orientation and our mission and the business that we're trying to grow. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about sort of how WM thinks about that balance between sort of the social impact that the company is driving in the context of business objectives, and how does education sort of play into that balance?
Sure. So if you go on our website and you look at what our values and commitments are, you'll see the first value is us being people first. And the notion comes from the fact that if we invest in our people, the profits will come, the revenue will come. And a huge part of our partnership with the education with Guild was about that, putting our people first. So let me talk about the mission part first, and then I'll come to the business objectives. From a mission standpoint, we've already covered why we needed a way to close the gap between what's needed from a talent perspective and what we currently have, and Guild partnerships help us do that. But it was also a way for us to attract and retain our workforce. There's a senior executive of ours who traveled in the cab of a trash truck with one of our drivers. And he was just having a casual conversation with the driver, and then the driver basically said, I love my job. I've been working here for a long time. I earn a good living. I'm able to care for my family. But there's one thing that keeps me up at night, and it is, how do I put my 5 kids through college? I want them to have better careers, better jobs, better lives than we have. And while I have a great living, I don't think I can do that. And so when you think about WM taking the mantle of investing in not just the employees, but also their dependents, we are creating an impact on that truck driver's life in a way that could not have happened otherwise. And we have a lot of examples like that, single parents who did not have the opportunity to complete college, and now they have this opportunity through our partnership. There's a great story that you featured about a gentleman who could not graduate high school because he and his girlfriend had gotten pregnant, and then they focused on their daughter and raising a family. And then he finished his GED just as his daughter was completing her high school. It was just a really touching story. And so the kind of impact we are making for these individuals are go beyond a paycheck that they take home, right? This investment in them and their future. So that's the mission part. We feel that we're making an investment. The business part is it helps us attract and retain talent, right? So creating a differentiation in terms of not just paying for the education for our employees, but also the dependents. They want to stay with us. They believe that we are a company that cares about them, which we do, and care about their family. So we are an extension of their family. We are capturing not only the hearts and minds and souls of our employees, but also their family members. And it allows us to attract and retain individuals. We have almost 11,000 or so folks that have created a profile, that have started an education, that have started certification course, and are bettering themselves for not only doing well in their current jobs, but potentially taking on other jobs and creating value for themselves in ways that a simple paycheck in their existing job would not take on. So that's how we kind of balance the business part. I'm sure you've heard the amount of time, money, energy, resources it takes to attract and replace an individual that has left a job vacant. This allows us to attract and retain employees in a way that differentiates us from our competitors.
Super, super interesting, super compelling. I guess, Candice, I'm curious from your perspective, how does Sunrun think about this sort of mission, social impact balance with business priorities that the organization is trying to meet as well?
Absolutely. So when we think of education, or when I think of education, it's really kind of the foundational piece for people to build careers that are sustainable and reliable. And the industry is in rapid growth right now. So solar is really ripe for creating those opportunities. But when I think of the objectives and how education relates specifically to Sunrun, I have a great example. I'm going to tell the Guild story because it's near and dear to my heart, and it's a great story. So when we first found Guild, I thought this model is too good to be true. Like, what is this all about? So we kept digging into it, and we went to Guild, and we said, hey, we need to do some stuff for our electricians. Can you partner with us? And they said, no, you're way too small of an organization. I mean, they're working with Walmarts and Disney's and, big organizations. Anyway, we begged them enough to where they came back, and they said they would partner with us. And we initially, went to our senior team and said, hey, we're going to do this for our electricians, but wow, you should see what this program offers. And they looked at it and they said, this is a no-brainer. This isn't just for electricians. We need to open it up to our organization, to all of our organization. And I'm like, okay, well, hold on. Like, there's some money involved with this, not directly to Guild, but there is some money involved. And they didn't care. They said, this is what we're doing, is we're educating our workforce, not just our electricians. And so anyway, we got the partnership going with Guild, and I'm super proud to say this little small solar company that they weren't sure if they wanted to partner with. It was the second biggest launch for Guild in Guild's history. And it was super exciting for us because we've had about 34% of our eligible population enroll on the platform, at least get onto the platform. There's some other statistics behind that. But it really shows that education is important for us as an organization so we can grow, but with the population that's engaging in this, it's just as important for them. They want to upgrade, or they want to get education, they want to upskill, and so it's just a perfect story, and our CEO loves it. She loves to talk about it all the time, because again, it aligns with a lot of the objectives that she's trying to push through.
I love that story, Candice, and I will say, Guild, we do think big, but we also, I think, very intentionally work with organizations that are deeply invested, right, and deeply committed. And I think the degree of uptake that we've seen since the launch with Sunrun is a great example of the way in which the organization is really committed. So I love that. Dara, I want to sort of switch gears a little bit, and I know that the working adult learner is really the audience, the core audience that Penn Foster serves, and I think it's what makes the Guild and Penn Foster relationship so strong, is that sort of shared alignment on serving that student. I'm curious if you could sort of share a little bit about sort of what are the kind of insights and inputs that you use, that Penn Foster uses when thinking about developing new programs or enhancing existing programs, both sort of direct from industry or perhaps sort of macro trends in the context of things like we're talking about today?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mark. And I think climate change is a really big topic, right? Climate change impacts pretty much everything and everyone, right? If you think about climate change, you think about aging infrastructure that needs to be replaced, technology that's used to run companies that needs to be upgraded, new types of jobs. We talked about the new jobs at WM, the new jobs at Sunrun. And so as an organization that's really focused on putting people to work through training, we have to be thinking about what are those different areas. Now, not one person can be good at everything, so we try to specialize in certain trades and healthcare roles and certain business roles, but it really impacts sort of everything that we do, looking at where are the jobs, how are they growing, and then what is the skill layer underneath the job. So a job and a job title only tells you so much. What are the skills that are needed in that job? What are the 10 to 15 skills that you're going to need to master in order to be an electrician, or a solar installer, or an HVAC technician? And the reality is while the title might be the same, over the last 5 or 10 years, the skills needed for that job are drastically different. And it's through conversations with employers, it's through apprenticeship programs, it's through dealing with people in the workforce that we're able to have a closed loop where we change our instructional design, we change our courses, we update the content to be aligned to what the jobs really need. And I think you need a really tight feedback loop between education and employers in order to keep that kind of up and going and running. And then the other thing I'd say is is the profile of the sort of worker learner that exists today. Particularly in the pandemic, where everyone is trying to do what's right for them, they're less loyal to individual companies and to their careers. Their careers, a little bit, they think of as what is going to be best for me now might be different in 3 months, 6 months, et cetera. So the work that you're doing to extend your value proposition, to build your brand, and to make it a place that people can see themselves long-term is especially important for the working learner today, because they feel like they hold the cards, right? They want to take their skills and their talent where they see fit, and things like investing in them through training and investing in their families definitely helps them feel more aligned to wanting to stay within that organization.
I want to sort of stay on that for maybe one more question, then given time, maybe open it up to the audience to see if there are questions. But you made a comment, Dara, that I thought was really thoughtful around sort of that really tight feedback loop. And we have up on stage here folks who represent the employer side of of sort of the work that we do, folks who represent academic institutions. I'm wondering, like, from your perspective, if you're sort of looking across the aisle, if you will, either sort of employer to learning partner or vice versa, what kind of insights are sort of the most important for you, for your organization, in terms of thinking about how to sort of effectively upskill and make an impact on the workforce that or the student that you're serving? And maybe Shweta, I'll start with you.
So I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Industry 4.0, and for those who have not, it's just basically the fourth industrial revolution, where technology is getting infused into organizations in our world at a much faster pace because of lack of labor shortage or labor supply or things like that. So that's kind of what I mean when we think about infusing technology in the work we do. It's not necessarily replacing a mass of employees. It's not about that. It's about how do you advance as an organization and automate things that are simpler and create advancement and progress in the way you're delivering to your customers, your communities, and the world. And so for that, what is required is a different skill set. The job description or the job title may say the same thing, but the skill set is different. An individual that is sorting on a recycling line where they're taking away cardboard and separating plastic and a used carton versus an unused carton, now we can do that through optical solutioning. So there's technology that we can infuse where you don't need a human to do that. But you need a human to understand how that optical solution machine does the work, and you need a mechanic or somebody that can fix that. So the feedback loop from my standpoint is, what are the jobs of the future as we can predict them? What are the skills of today, and what's the gap? And how can we create an accelerated path towards closing that gap through education, through learning, through partnerships, through universities, through Guild? And that, to me, is the feedback loop, is what do we need for the future? What do we have today? How do we close the gap?
Candice, any thoughts from your perspective?
Yeah, so really the feedback loop for me with education, when I think about solar, yes, we're bigger because, Vivint Solar and Sunrun merged together, but we're still a very scrappy company. And so what I need from education is I need that benchmarking. I need to reach out to the guilds and the community colleges and the universities to say, what are other employers doing? Like, how should I be thinking about this? Because they're in the middle of all this. They see what's happening, or, what are students looking for? How do we need to design things on our side? And, as Penn Foster and Guild knows, we're not afraid to give some feedback too. So I think it's good to be able to have that two-way communication. But again, most beneficial for me is really them giving us that overview of what the rest of the world is doing and what we need to be thinking about.
Yeah, so Ecampus is a unit that has quite a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, I always say, while we live in a traditional university. So that's always fun. So what we've been trying to do at Ecampus is I guess, look outside what a traditional university does. What does the learner need? What does industry need? So we know that not all learners want a degree. Not all learners can afford a degree, frankly, and not all learners have time for an entire degree. So we've been putting a lot of focus on micro-credentials and alternative credentials. And what's great about our partnership with Guild is because they have the industry connection, they're helping us decide and determine what do we want to repackage. Maybe it's 3 courses out of a degree that's something else now, and it's not an entire degree. So we've launched some micro-credentials, and we're working with Guild and others to also look at some other micro-credentials, which will be faster and cheaper for students to get. And I think for us, what's really exciting is just thinking and leading the university on unpackaging degrees, because degrees are big. So we are looking at shaping them and unpackaging them and making them more easily accessible for learners.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes down to part of some of what I said earlier, right? I think, Guild is in an interesting place because you sit across a whole range of employers, and so that does provide a good feedback into the market. But I think training organizations need to be able to take that feedback and do something with it. And so that means quickly customizing courses, finding ways to do the assessments, finding ways to measure competency, finding ways to do training. And so it's the combination of what the inputs are, what is needed, and then how do you solve that problem with the right types of education and training for the workforce. But as I mentioned before, the trainee or the learner is a big part of the equation. And what we're seeing more and more is our learners are mobile first, right? They're not on their email, they're texting. They want information that's at their fingertips, video. They want different modalities of learning. And so trying to connect what is a specific skill with the best way to teach the skill is really what we see as our job.
I think we have time for maybe one or two questions. Anyone in the audience have any questions for our panelists, generally, specifically?
Love the work. Oh, that was fast. Impressive. So I work at the federal level on climate and climate education, and one of the questions about the speed at which we're going to do this, I love the innovation, but the gap is actually much, much, much bigger between education and skilled. When you look at the climate plans, especially what we saw at the lunch today, that gap is huge, and we don't have a plan. So I'm wondering who has the handle on how we close that gap? Because it feels like pieces. I love the innovation from the business, but it is a much bigger problem. Who's got the handle on it? Who should have the handle on it?
That's a big question. I think you can't close the gap with one segment of education or another, right? We are representing mostly adult education, so not kind of the K-12 foundational learning. I think you need to have both pieces of that come together to really make the massive difference, to your point of kind of closing the gap. Should we be doing early trades education in 6th, 7th, 8th grade? Yes, right? How do traditional school districts get ahead of this and start to bring employer-focused education into their mix? How do we get, our 9th graders excited about a career in solar and having that be equal to a career in X, Y, and Z BA degree field? There's a big push there. I'm not saying, I don't know that Penn Foster's positioned to solve that, but I do think that's a big initiative. I think that the other part is, there are a lot of DOE sponsored grants and training. There are a lot of local organizations that sponsor apprenticeships that can help employers how to bridge that gap. And then I think, the education that Lisa and I represent, as well as that combination, has to play, a role. So I think it's 3, 4, 5 pieces that need to come together. And I don't know if there's a perfect way to do that, but I don't think it's just one channel that can really make that difference.
I think it has to be all hands in the huddle. It's not one person or one stakeholder's responsibility to own this and handle it. We all have to go in it together, because there's skin in the game for everybody. There's skin in the game for us as individuals, there's skin in the game for us as companies, there's skin in the game for us as educators, policymakers, government, all of it. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily complex in the way that you can't figure it out. I just think it's so huge, and that's what creates the complexity, and the gap is so big that creates the complexity. But I think it has to be all hands in the huddle.
Great. Well, I think we're out of time. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Thanks especially for
Thank
the
you.
panelists today. It's a really excellent conversation.
Thank you.